Now let's talk about how to prepare the space, what you have to prepare for yourself and the space and so on to practice yoga, ideally. Now, this is just a general ideal preparation. You have to work with what you have. I had apartments in New York City that were small as some rich people's closet for clothes, literally. I used to put my bed on my ceiling by ropes, pulleys, put it up on the ceiling, just to add some space in the room during the day. So you do whatever you can, right? So ideally, the space for your yoga is private. It's nice when you don't have people watching you and you can control the temperature and all that. Ideally, it's a dedicated space. Maybe you have a house and like you have 3 rooms in the house and one of them doing nothing, so you can turn it into a yoga practice hall or something, even a small one. So a dedicated space is nice. A room that's unaffected by the elements is good. This is even talked about in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, an important text of the yoga tradition. You really want to make it so that you're not affected by drafts coming through the room or extra humidity or fungus, mold growth, this kind of thing. So unaffected by the elements is better as well. Try to avoid using your bedrooms though. That's difficult. Like I said, I was in an apartment where it was one room for everything. But if you can avoid using your bedroom, it's better. When you go in the bedroom to do your spiritual practice, there's a heavy tamasic energy. You go there to sleep, to get unconscious, unless you're practicing high-level dream yoga. So in that case, practicing yoga in your bedroom is kind of hard because the energy is a bit heavier usually, right? Your association with that room is about going out, Now, the size of the practice area. I'd say, 3 meters by 2 meters would be a really good size at the minimum. Of course, you can get away, depending if you're a short person, by 2 meters by 1.5 meters, if you really are small and you really have a small space. But 3 meters by 2 would be kind of a minimum, I think. Then you want to make sure you have good ventilation, but you don't want breezes. You can check it by putting a candle and check if the flame is jumping all around, right? Especially kind of a floor draft you don't want. A lot of old houses, a lot of rooms like that. You get this heavy, cold draft on the floor. That's not so good for you when you're laying there recovering in Shavasana in between a few postures. So a wood or stone floor is preferable over carpet. I know in cold places you guys love to have carpet, but it's just not good because it holds a lot of dust, holds a lot of mites and all these kind of different things. So we don't really want to be in the carpet. So wood or stone floor, and then you can put your yoga mat out there if you use a yoga mat. Well lit, a room that has really good lighting is important too. Again, you don't want it to be too tamasic, too heavy. If that room catches the morning sun, that's even better. That's really wonderful because the morning practice session for yoga is probably your most important session. You might be doing a session in the afternoon, like noon, one at dinner time, one before bed. Like when I was really practicing in my early days, I would do 4 sessions a day. Of course, not very rigorous, but 4 sessions a day as you're developing that yoga body, yoga energy. But the morning one was the most important. It was facing east, beautiful sunrise, and just get all that power of the sun and inspiration energy. It is different. So if you can get something facing east, great. I even remember I had an apartment in Oakland, California for a while. And I was in the top level of an apartment. And I had a table in front of the front window. And that faced perfectly east. And you could see the sunrise over all the hills of other houses. It was unusual to get a sunrise on that street. So I used to sit up on the table in the window meditating in the morning. You just got to do the best you can. Try to make sure there's no mold or fungus. Use whatever you can to clean it out. Make sure it smells clean. That's a very important thing. And ideally it receives that early morning sun, which is also good for killing mold and fungus and mites and all that other stuff too. And when you're not using it for the yoga, you might want to air it out. That's nice too. Recommended colors for the room are yellow, saffron, rose, or mint green combinations. These are all nice and cooling. I shouldn't say cooling. Some of them are warming and activating, but they're doing the right thing with the color as it affects your mind for spiritual practice. The mint green is kind of cooling. Rose can be sort of cooling, sort of warming. Yellow is really good for raising the wisdom power, the intellect power of the practice. And saffron is kind of like a nice balance of willpower, intellect power, this kind of thing all in one. But anyway, whatever color you have is fine, as long as you can get a good, clean area to practice in. That's number one, okay? So before you practice each time, you want to dust and you want to clean the floor. So at least sweep the floor, if not mop it. and definitely dust if you can. Take away offerings from the altar if you're the kind of person that has an altar and you make offerings at it. Take away those offerings from the night before, the food, the flowers, and so on, the water, change it all. Like that. And then, if you're like urban and you have a really, you live right in the middle of the city, try to bring some of nature inside. Have some really large elephant-eared plants, they're really good for filtering the air, giving negative ions, and making you feel a little more natural, which is kind of important in the yoga tradition. Our Mahasiddhas who gave us this tradition lived in nature, in a deep, you could say, naked relationship with nature. And that really has something powerful for us in the practice. So if we live in the city and we can't do that, bring it in somehow. Get a small little tree, little tree in the room. Get some elephant-eared plants, get some flowers, and so on. Electric air filters and ionizers. If I'm living in a city, I want to use those for sure, because the air is dangerous, basically. It's not like here. The air I'm getting, the last time anybody messed with it with any kind of modern convenience was when it left New Zealand or Hawaii and came a few more thousand miles and reaches me here on the coast of Costa Rica. So we get this perfect air. If you don't have that, you'll need to have filtered air. And a negative ion producer is quite good. Yeah, you might even need an air filter. Filters are quite good in that dust particles are floating around in urban situations, even from our clothes. If we wear synthetic clothes, there's little particles that float around that are held by the electric field around the body. Everybody's an individual electric field, their own personal electric field, which holds dust around them, which is quite strange. That ends up getting in your lungs, nasal passages, eyes, and it ends up causing problems because these charged particles are from synthetic fabrics, right? So I think when I lived in cities and had air filters, electric air filters, I was amazed at how 8 or 12 hours of running it is an electric air filter, right? So it's using the polar charge to grab the stuff. I'd pull out the fins that were polar charged, which grab all the dust, and I was just amazed at how I'd have to wipe just black soot off of each one, pulling out of the air, because you couldn't see it. You couldn't even see it in the sky. It looked sunny in the sky, but it was in the air you're breathing. So I can't recommend that enough, because you're going to be doing pranayama, you're going to be doing breathing practices, taking breath deep into every lobe of your lungs, more than a normal person breathes. You don't want dirty air going in, right? So it's nice if you're living in an apartment that has a cold season, like a winter season with snow and stuff. The heat inside can make them very dry. So make sure you have multiple bowls of water out, bowls of water just exposed. It's a very good thing to do to make sure there's enough humidity in the air if you live in one of those super cold, arid kind of climates, okay? Now, what do we do for the body? How do we prepare the body? The dinacharya, or the way that we follow a daily routine, is kind of important to prepare for yoga. When you get up in the morning, scrape your tongue. Learn how to do that in a Primal Ayurveda course. You can get that through the website. Scrape your tongue really well, get the information you need off of it about your health. Massage your gums, brush your teeth. We talk about all that in Primal Ayurveda. Then you'd like to learn neti. Neti is not something I can teach on a video. We have to do it in person, and that's where you're taking a container of salty warm water, pouring it through one nostril out the other, pouring it through one out the other, then cleansing. This is very, very good practice to get into, to take the junk out of your nasal passages that gets in there from the atmosphere and your own excess mucus production, so that your head feels light, you don't feel heavy and clogged, and you don't feel dull, cloudy in the mind, and you can do nice breathing practices without impediment. All right, now, I also recommend at that time you splash water on your face. Take cold water, splash on your eyes, splash on your face, not like 2 or 3 times, like 10 or 20 times, to make the cold water really affect the face, because we store a lot of heat in our face overnight. And we want to take all that heat out, and we want to freshen the eyes with that water, okay? Then, next thing you would do is hydrate yourself. Get clean water. Drink somewhere between a half a liter and a liter. Just get it down, because we sweat a lot through the night, need to be hydrated. That's the next thing we should do. And hopefully by then you've defecated. If not, try to sit down and train your mind to defecate. If you're the kind of person who needs tea, strong tea like chai, black tea, green tea, or rolling thunder coffee to get a defecation going, a bowel movement in the morning, try to wean yourself off that. That isn't really good at all. You can do it simply by sitting down or squatting. You can look about squatting online. Squatting to go to the toilet is the best, actually. You can do that, retraining yourself by just sitting a few minutes a day, every day, whether you go or not at that time of day. But by drinking the big amount of water when you hydrate first, it creates a stimulation in the gastrointestinal tract, and it starts to move. You get peristalsis, and you get things starting to move. So it can stimulate you to go. Try that. Then you want to take a shower, right? A lot of people get up in the morning and go through their day and only shower at night. In fact, that's often an Asian custom, Chinese custom, to shower more at night than in the morning. But in the yoga tradition, we shower with cold water, or we throw cold water on ourselves, or we jump into a cold river and jump out in the morning to activate all of our channels to get us really awake. So it really does wake up our nervous system and gets us going. So take that cold shower, and if you feel like, you know, it really feels like it takes my vata up too high to do a cold shower, then do your warm shower, but don't do a hot one. And hit a blast of cold on the end. At least count to 10 under cold water. You can do that. Okay, unless your Ayurvedic doctor tells you not to. Then wear loose-fitting, natural fiber, linen, cotton, or hemp clothes to do your yoga in. That would be the best possible. Okay? When I'm demonstrating for you, I'm going to be wearing tight, stretchy pants because I don't want you to be able to not see where my leg is or my knee is inside of my big tie pants I'm wearing right now. Okay, but I recommend linen, cotton, or hemp. There's a lot of reasons for it. I'm sure you probably know those already. Now, what do you do for your mind and your energy preparation? This is really important. Before your session, you want to sit quietly. You want to invoke the body of pure potentials. What does that mean? Well, you're really just an individual space and awareness energy filling that space. You look like a hard body, but it's not true, right? We're a kshetriya, a field of knowing or awareness. So we need to invoke that, because if we get up every morning to do yoga on our hard, crusty physical body and try to crank it open into flexibility, it's just a labor of intensity, not a labor of love. It just won't work. So we want to change the experience of our body. This must happen before we start our practice, right? And this is creating an empty body visual with red light. So you're not organs, you're not tissues, you're not even really like this shape so much. You get more of an amorphous shape, and you're a red light body, as if you can imagine that you're sitting inside of a huge red silk bag in the summer sunlight. It's a silk bag pulled at the top, and you're sitting in the center. Maybe it's a massive bag. And what kind of interior would that look like? Pure red, ruby red laser light. This is what we want to invoke at the start of our practice, okay? It helps us remember, and it's important to re-invoke this, that we're malleable, we're not solid, we really can change, that our body is light that's moving very slowly, right? And we can get it back to its original nature. It all starts with changing our mind and our perception of our body, right? We can also make prayers and offerings to the Mahasiddhas of yoga. You might see one over my shoulder right here, Chandanata, the great first of all the Mahasiddhas, who gave us the yoga we're practicing right here in these videos. So we can do prayers and offerings to the Mahasiddhas and ask for their blessings. This is another great way to open us up, including the red light body visualization. So what time of the day do we want to practice? Well, and how much? Well, the minimum time for practice, I would say, would be about 30 minutes. Because less than that, you're kind of fighting against your body. Once you become like a master of your yoga, jumping down on the floor for 10, 15 minutes, a few times a day, will have a great result. But you got to master it first. So I'd say minimum of 30 minutes up to about 60 minutes in the beginning will start to develop a good practice for yourself. But one of the things you want to keep in mind is to be regular about it in this learning phase before you customize, before it becomes prescriptive. And to be regular about it, it's better to commit to a shorter amount of time practicing than a longer amount. Because when you commit to a longer amount and you get up too late, you're like, oh, I can't do an hour, I'll skip it, I'll do it after dinner. And then you don't after dinner, you watch TV. So be consistent with the time of day in the beginning. Shoot for about 30 minutes, it would be good. If you want to practice longer, you'll get more benefits, it's true. And the Brahma Muhurta, a time of day called the Brahma Muhurta, from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. roughly, is a really great time to practice. Now, I know in an urban situation, we need a lot of sleep. We need at least 8 to 10 hours of sleep to cope with the stresses of an urban lifestyle. So if you can't get up that early, it's completely understood. But practicing yoga a little bit before sunrise, right into the sunrise is the sweet spot. If we can ever get to that, maybe we're on vacation or a holiday, we go take a retreat in the mountains or something at the beach. That would be something we could kind of shoot for. But then you want to get to bed early, 8 o'clock, 8:30, something like that. Then it won't feel like it's a real hardship to get up for practice at that time. And you're getting your yoga nidra in the middle of the day, right? So here's a little bit about how we prep for practice. We have one more class where we talk about setting intentions and so on, and then we go right into the body of the practices themselves, which I know you're waiting for. See you then.